The morning Chester showed up 40 minutes early. I told myself it was nothing. I was still in my bathrobe, sitting on the edge of the bed Harvey and I had shared for 31 years, staring at the dress I'd bought 2 months ago. Deep burgundy, lace collar. The kind of dress you wear when something important is happening. I should have been putting it on. I should have been calling Holden to say, "I'm on my way. I'm so proud of you." Instead, I sat there with my hands folded in my lap, listening to the May rain tap against the window, feeling a cold knot in my stomach that I couldn't name or shake. Something was wrong. I didn't know what. I just knew. When Chester knocked a second time, I finally got up. He looked the way he always looks when something serious is happening. Jaw tight, eyes careful. Chester Briggs had worked for Harvey for 22 years. Drove him to meetings, helped manage the rental properties, stood at the back of the funeral home the night we buried Harvey 4 years ago. He's 71 now, and he doesn't waste words. "Lucille," he said, "you need to come with me right now, and Holden cannot see you leave." I stared at him. "Chester, I know how this sounds." His voice dropped, "but I made a promise to Harvey the week before he passed. Said I'd look after you and that boy no matter what it cost me. I'm asking you to trust me, please." Harvey's name hit me somewhere behind the ribs. Chester never used it lightly. "What is this about?" I whispered. He shook his head. "Not here. Get dressed. Something plain. We're running out of time. Holden comes down those stairs in 15 minutes. I was in the car in 4. Chester's old Buick still smelled the same as it always had. Worn leather and those pine air fresheners Harvey used to tease him about buying in bulk. Chester told me to get in the back seat and stay low. Not hidden under anything, not covered, just leaned back, out of the sight line of anyone looking through the passenger window. I did it without argument, though my heart was going so hard I could feel it in my back teeth. Holden came out at 7:45. The front door closed with its familiar click. His footsteps crossed the wet driveway. The passenger door opened. He dropped into the seat and the car immediately filled with his cologne. Cedar and something citrus, the same one Harvey had worn. He'd asked me once if that was strange, choosing the same scent. I told him it made me feel like his father was still in the room with us. "Morning, Chester." Holden's voice was bright, nervous in a good way. "I keep thinking I'm going to wake up and it's going to be the day before." "It's the day itself, sir." Chester's voice was perfectly even. "How are you feeling?" "Terrified." He laughed, but the right kind of terrified. Like, this is the thing I've been waiting for. I just want to be her husband. That's all I want. I pressed 2 fingers over my mouth and looked at the upholstered ceiling. I had tried to love Kendall. I had tried for 14 months. She had walked into Holden's life at a charity auction for the Children's Hospital. This poised, beautiful woman in a green dress who had apparently known exactly what to say about grief and new beginnings and the courage it takes to start over. Holden was 31 and still raw from losing his father. He'd been easy to reach, easy to open. The first time I met her, something felt practiced. I couldn't pin it down. She said the right things, looked me in the eye, spoke about Holden with specific and thoughtful warmth that seemed genuine. But her gaze kept moving to the photographs on the mantel, to the built-in shelves, to the view of the property behind our house, taking stock. I told myself I was being protective, a suspicious widow who didn't want her son to move forward. I told myself I was the problem. I was not the problem. Holden's phone buzzed on the dashboard. He picked it up. "It's Kendall," he answered it warm and easy. "Hey you, how's the morning going?" I couldn't hear her side, but I could hear Holden, and the shift in his voice was slight enough that a stranger wouldn't catch it. From relaxed to careful. He went careful. "Right," he said. "Yeah, I know. I'll see you there." A pause. "I love you too." He set the phone down. The car held a few seconds of quiet. Then his phone rang again. Unknown number. Holden looked at the screen, let it ring twice. On the third ring, something changed in his breathing. I heard it from where I was, that particular long exhale, and he answered. "You need to stop calling this number." His voice was barely above a whisper, clipped and tight. "I told you I would handle it. Not today. Stop calling. He ended it, set the phone in his lap. Chester's voice came gently from the front. Everything all right? Fine, too fast. It's nothing, a vendor thing. He didn't say anything else. But I heard him exhale again, slow and controlled, the way a man tries to steady himself when he's scared and doesn't want anyone to know it. And I thought, what are you running from, Holden? And why do you think today is going to make it stop? Chester turned left where he should have turned right. I'd driven to St. Andrews so many times the route was in my body. Harvey and I were married there. Holden was baptized there. We said goodbye to Harvey from the front pew on a gray October morning. This was not the way. Holden noticed. Chester, where are we going? Quick errand, sir. Won't take long. I'll have you to the church in plenty of time. Holden didn't push back. Maybe he was too tangled up in the phone call. Chester drove for another 8 minutes and then pulled over on a street of modest single-story homes, small yards tall, oak trees dripping from the rain, a few cars parked half on the curb. I need to run inside for a signature on a maintenance contract, Chester said, already opening his door. 5 minutes at most. Wait here. I heard him come around to my side of the car, his voice dropping close to the window. Now, Lucille. Yellow house across the street. Side yard, left of the driveway. Watch and don't move. He was gone before I could answer. I counted to 10, then I opened the door and stepped out. The air was cool and smelled like wet grass. I stood behind the Buick and looked at the yellow house. Small, well-kept. A child's tricycle on its side near the front steps. A mailbox with the name Novak painted in plain black letters. Novak. Kendall's name was Marsh. That was what she'd told us. Kendall Marsh. I read that mailbox twice, then I looked at the side yard. The gate opened. Kendall came out first. Not the version of Kendall I knew, not the polished, put-together woman who'd sat at my dining room table discussing interior design and estate planning. This was someone different. Jeans, a zip-up sweatshirt, hair pulled back in a loose braid. She moved with quick efficiency, like someone running through a checklist. Behind her, in the doorway, a man. Late 30s, heavy-set in the way of someone who used to be active and stopped. Dark circles, unshaved. He stood with his arms crossed and watched her the way you watch someone you've argued with for years and run out of arguments. And then a little girl burst past him and ran straight for Kendall. She was maybe 4 years old, dark curly hair, rain boots on the wrong feet, a purple jacket that was one size too big. She threw her arms around Kendall's legs and said, "Mama, are you coming back tonight?" The whole world seemed to stop. Kendall crouched down. Her voice changed. Whatever calculation lived in her voice when she spoke to me, to Holden, to anyone at dinner parties or family gatherings. None of it was there. What replaced it was the most real thing I had ever heard from her. "I'll be home tonight, sweetheart. I promise. You stay with Daddy." The man stepped off the front stoop. His voice was low and worn out. "She's been asking all morning." "One day," Kendall said, standing back up. "That's all this is. After today, the debt is paid and we're done." He rubbed the back of his neck. "He seems like a decent man, Kendall. That's all I'm saying." "I know." She said it without flinching. "That's not the part I'm responsible for." $180,000. "I know how much it is." She stepped close to him and said something I couldn't hear. Then she kissed him. Not a polite kiss. A real one. Years of shared history in it, comfort and regret mixed together. The little girl tugged on the man's sleeve and asked if they could have waffles. I stood behind Chester's Buick with my hand flat against my sternum and watched Kendall Novak, which was, I now understood, her actual name, slip back through the gate and disappear, on her way to my son's church, on her way to say I do. I crossed the street. Travis answered the door before I'd finished knocking. He looked at me, and all the color left his face at once. "My name is Lucille Crane," I said. "Holden is my son." He stepped back. He didn't say anything. He just opened the door wider. The little girl was on the living room floor, arranging plastic horses in a line. She looked up at me with Kendall's eyes. "Hi, I'm Harper." "Hi, Harper," I smiled at her. Then I looked at Travis. He told me everything. It came out in clumps, like a confession he'd rehearsed too many times alone and was finally giving to the right person. He and Kendall had been married for 6 years. A small ceremony in Raleigh, both of them young and hopeful. Harper came early, 11 weeks premature, and the NICU stay had cost them everything they'd saved and then some. A business Travis started had failed 2 years later. They'd borrowed money from a private lender named Decker. $180,000. A contract full of language Travis hadn't understood until the penalties started compounding. Decker was not a forgiving man. "She researched your family for months," Travis said. He was looking at his hands. "The property records are public. She saw what your husband built, the commercial portfolio, the life insurance payout, what Holden was in line to manage. She said if she could get inside that family, just for a year, get Holden to add her name to the properties the way couples do." He stopped. "And then leave," I said. "Pay Decker, disappear somewhere he couldn't find us, start over with Harper." He finally looked up. "I didn't like it. I told her I didn't like it, but I was scared. And she's always been the one who figures out what to do next. He couldn't finish the sentence. It was Travis who had called Holden that morning from the unknown number. He told me that almost as an aside, ashamed. He'd panicked at the last minute, wanted to warn Holden himself, then lost his nerve when Holden answered. He'd called twice more before Kendall told him to stop. "Do you have documentation?" I asked. He went to the bedroom and came back with a manila folder, their marriage certificate. 6 years of photographs, Harper's birth, Christmases, a family trip to the Outer Banks, printed text messages. One of them read, "Crane properties alone are worth over $2 million. Once I have access to the accounts, Decker gets paid within 60 days and we're done." Another, "Holden trusts me completely. He'll put my name on the duplex as a wedding gift. He already mentioned it." From there, it's straightforward. I folded everything back into the envelope. My hands were steady. I was surprised by that. "Come to the church," I said. "Bring Harper. Bring this folder." Travis went pale. "She'll see me." "You'll arrive after she's in the bridal suite. Chester will direct you to a side room. She won't know you're there until it's over." I held his gaze. "My son is at that altar believing in something that isn't real. He deserves the truth before he makes a vow he can't undo. Can you give him that?" Travis looked at Harper, still on the floor, humming softly, lining up her horses with tremendous seriousness. "For her," he said quietly, "and because you're right." Chester drove me back to the house while Holden was already gone. Chester had managed that too, gently suggesting that Trey's car had more room for Holden's suit bag, steering him out the door 20 minutes before I returned. I walked into my own home and went upstairs and stood in front of the mirror and told myself to hold it together for the next 2 hours. Then I went downstairs and found Holden in the living room, tie halfway knotted, laughing at something Trey had sent him. He looked up and the relief on his face was immediate. "Mom, there you are. You look beautiful." "Thank you, sweetheart." I crossed the room and took his tie in my hands the way I always have. Before his first real job interview, before his father's funeral, every moment that mattered. He went still the way he always does. And for a second he was 12 years old and I was sending him off to something important and trying not to let him see that I was scared for him. "You've been quiet about today," he said softly. "About Kendall, I noticed." "I'm always quiet when I'm proud." I smoothed down his lapels and looked up at him. "Holden, whatever today brings, I love you first and I love you last. You know that." He frowned. "That's a strange thing to say at a wedding." "It's a true thing to say at any time." I patted his chest once. "Go, Trey's waiting." St. Andrew's was everything Holden had wanted. Not formal, not overwhelming, just the people who mattered gathered in afternoon light. White hydrangeas and garden roses at every pew. The pipe organ filling the old Stowe's nave with something solemn and warm. Chester met me at the side entrance. "Travis is in the parish office with Harper," he said quietly. "Copies of everything are in my jacket, originals with him. He knows to wait for my text." I pressed his arm once. 22 years. Harvey had known exactly what he was doing. I found my seat in the front pew. Holden stood at the altar with Trey, shifting his weight, watching the doors at the back of the church. His face was open in the way it only gets when he's moved. All that readiness, all that hope. Seeing it nearly broke me in half. The music changed. Kendall appeared at the back of the church and the room softened around her. She was stunning. Ivory dress, hair pinned with small pearl pins, white roses in her hands. She walked slowly, every step measured to the music, her smile wide and warm. Holden pressed one hand to his chest, tears on his face before she reached the third row. I watched her eyes, not the smile. The eyes moved over the pews the way they'd moved over my living room 14 months ago. Assessing, accounting. When they found me in the front row, they held for half a second before she looked back at Holden and let the smile go all the way. Reverend Aldrich had buried Harvey and baptized Holden, and now he stood before them and spoke about covenant and the particular courage it takes to give someone your whole truth. I sat with my hands in my lap and breathed. If anyone here has cause why these two should not be joined in holy matrimony, speak now or forever hold your peace. 2 seconds of silence. I stood up. The sound of it, just the pew creaking, just my heels on marble, was quiet, but in that stillness it carried to every corner of that church. I object. It landed like a stone in still water. Gasps from 3 directions at once, a sharp inhale from somewhere behind me, the rush of 200 people understanding at the exact same moment that something was wrong. Holden turned. I will carry the look on his face with me for the rest of my life. Confusion first, then something that wasn't quite fear but was close to it. Mom, what are you? I'm sorry. I looked at him directly. I'm so sorry, Holden, but this ceremony cannot go forward. Kendall's composure fractured in one controlled instant. Her hands tightened on the bouquet stem. Lucille. Her voice was careful, on the edge. Whatever concerns you have, this is not the way to handle this. Not here. Not in front of everyone. Your name is not Kendall Marsh. I looked at her. Your name is Kendall Novak. You have been legally married to Travis Novak for 6 years. The church erupted. Holden took one step back. Trey caught his arm. Mom, that's not possible. We've been together over a year. She would never. I saw them this morning, I said. I spoke with Travis. I have their marriage certificate, photographs, bank records, and text messages explaining what she planned and why. I took the papers Chester had given me from my purse and held them out. I did not come to this moment until I was completely certain. Kendall abandoned the careful voice. She's lying. It came out higher, thinner. She has never accepted me. She has never wanted Holden to move on after his father. This is grief talking. This is a mother who can't let go. Then tell everyone here about Harper, I said. The name dropped into the room and everything went quiet again. Kendall's mouth closed. Her face went the color of the stone walls. Holden looked between us. Who is Harper? The doors at the back of the church opened. Chester had sent one text. Travis Novak walked down the center aisle of St. Andrew's, carrying a 4-year-old girl on his hip and a manila folder under his arm. Harper had apparently dressed herself that morning. Purple tutu, over a striped long-sleeve shirt, 2 different shoes, hair escaping its braids on both sides. She gazed at the flowers and candles with enormous eyes. Then she found Kendall at the altar. Mama! Her whole face broke open into delight. Both arms reached out. Mama, you look like a princess! The sound that moved through the congregation was not a gasp. It was deeper than that. A room full of people arriving at the truth at the same moment. The sound of 200 people understanding something terrible all at once. Holden made a sound I had never heard from him. He turned away from the altar and put his hand over his mouth. Travis stopped near the altar steps. He looked at Holden, not at Kendall. I'm sorry, he said, and the sincerity of it was plain and painful. You didn't deserve a single part of this. What followed was not graceful. Kendall tried to speak twice, first to deny it, then to explain. The explanation was the worst of the two. She talked about the debt, about Decker, about the NICU bills when Harper came early, about running out of options. She was not wrong about the desperation. But the room had heard a 4-year-old call her name. and no explanation settles cleanly after that. Holden did not speak. He stood with his back to the altar and his jaw set and listened. To Travis's account, to the documents passed between hands, to everything he had not been given the chance to know. When Reverend Aldrich quietly said he was unable to continue, Holden just nodded once, like a man closing a door. The officers arrived because Chester had placed a call that morning, before any of us walked through those church doors. He had been careful about this for weeks. Found Travis through public property records, had gathered everything slowly, had said nothing until he was ready. He doesn't move until he's ready. 2 officers, unhurried and professional, walked Kendall out through the side entrance. Harper watched from Travis's arms, confused, and too young to understand why her mother was leaving with strangers, too young to understand why the women in the front pews were crying, too young to know what any of the words being said around her meant. None of it was her fault, not a single minute of it. I went to Holden. He was still standing at the altar in the exact spot where his world had come apart. I put my hand on his back and said nothing. After a long time, he said, "Was any of it real?" I didn't offer him a comfortable answer. "I honestly don't know, sweetheart. Maybe there were moments. I think sometimes people lose track of where the plan ends and the feeling begins." I held his gaze. "What I know is that you loved her honestly. That part was real. That was all you." He turned and looked at me with Harvey's eyes, tired and raw and still recognizably himself underneath all of it. "Why didn't you tell me at home? Why wait until we were standing in front of everyone?" "Because if I had told you at home, you would have gone to her first." I said it gently. "You would have wanted to give her the chance to explain, and she would have destroyed those documents and denied everything and spent the next 6 months making you doubt what you'd heard. I needed her to have no room left to run." I paused. "I needed you to have witnesses." He was quiet for a moment. "I hate that you're right." "I know." He leaned his forehead against mine, the way he'd done since he was small, whenever he was frightened or sick or needed to feel like the world was still standing. We stayed like that while the church slowly emptied around us, guests filing out one by one, some stopping to put a hand on Holden's shoulder, some too shaken to do anything but leave. 3 months later, I was at Harvey's desk going through the property quarterly reports when Holden came in with 2 cups of coffee. He set one next to my keyboard and dropped into the chair across from me, and I looked at him the way I'd been looking at him all these weeks. Reading him the way you read weather when you know the landscape. He looked better. Not whole, I wouldn't have trusted that yet, and he'd probably have laughed at me if I said he was. But better, sleeping through the night most nights. Calling friends. Seeing Dr. Forsyth on Tuesdays and talking about it without embarrassment, which made me prouder than almost anything. "Prosecutor called," he said. "Kendall took the plea. Sentencing is next month. Probably 18 months, maybe more." I nodded. "And Travis?" "He and Harper are up in Asheville. He got a position with a landscaping company. Sent me a message last week." Holden turned his coffee cup in his hands. "Said Harper started preschool. That she's doing well. She still asks." He stopped. Started again. "She still asks about her mom." "She's 4, I said. "She loves her mother, that's allowed." He glanced at me sidelong. "I helped with his legal fees, the custody arrangement. His attorney said it should go smoothly." He was half waiting for a reaction. I didn't give him one. That was the decent thing to do. He exhaled. "Chester told me he's thinking about retiring. He says that every spring." Holden smiled, a real smile, small, anchored in something genuine. "He saved my life, Mom." "He made a promise to your father," I said, "and he kept it." After Holden left, I sat for a while with my hands wrapped around my coffee and watched the rain come down over the back property. The same view Harvey had watched from this window for 20 years. The same oaks, the same gray May sky. There is a love that doesn't announce itself. It just shows up, early, quiet, jaw set, ready to do what the day requires. Chester had that. Harvey had it. I hope I did too, in my own imperfect way. Holden is going to be all right. He is learning what all of us learn, eventually. That being deceived is not a measure of your worth. That healing is just another name for what you keep choosing when everything in you would rather stop. That the people who love you most are sometimes the ones who say the hardest things. Harvey would have been so proud of who our son is becoming. I know I am.